So now that we dived into, I know with game mechanics, we'd probably just scratch the surface. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But how about we talk a little bit about lore and story? Now, you were mentioning one of the boss characters, Fear. Now, I actually, because I talked with Hannah Hero a little bit via email, she told me a little bit about the lore, so I know kind of who Fear is. Give us like a little explanation on what the lore is about to the best of your knowledge. I think sometime in the future probably have just Hannah on the show to give us a more in-depth detail. But just in general, what is the world of Source? What is that universe of Source of no, my head of
TimeStrike.
TimeStrike. What is that about?
Yeah. Sure, I can tackle this one. I really do wish Hannah was here. She's the expert and also worked really hard to craft it. But I will do my best from a top level. So, essentially, in the TimeStrike universe, it's a massive multiverse. You might even call it an ambiverse. There's these constant parallel universes, and as they run out of time, they find themselves at a place we call the Timescape, and we still call the Timescape in the lore. But effectively, it's when these universes run out of time, they collide. And it is sort of like this apocalyptic, super universal Pangea at the end of time, where the rules that you kind of lived under when you were on your planet or your homeworld before getting there, they're gone, and what you have is this sort of like wasteland where more or less planets are being recycled. It's like a planet graveyard is the best way to describe it. And so from a lore point of view, what we did when we started out is each one of the original 4 founders wrote their own story, wrote their own histories, their own characters, and their own worlds with all sorts of different sources of inspiration. So for instance, the two species or races you're going to be able to access in Shadow of Fear are going to be the Meek and the Fallen universe. I wrote the story for the Fallen universe, and Tony wrote the story for the Meek universe. And so when you come together to play TimeStrike, you're really playing a game where the Meek and the Fallen universes have collided, and you guys have survived that collision. And you are now fighting for your survival in the Timescape. And you are fighting against this giant monster, Fear, who is bent on obliterating you and consuming all the time of your universe. And so really what you're doing is you're trying to fight to get back home. You're trying to fight to get back to your timeline. You're trying to fight to survive the end of time is what you're looking to do. So again, Hannah can do a much better job on this. But long story short, in the Fallen universe, it is a post-Armageddon world where the forces of heaven and earth have collided and clashed, and hell won. And so it tells the story of humanity. There's 1% of humanity is left on this planet, basically just trying to survive throughout what is an extermination. And so when the Fallen universe reaches the Timescape, you just sort of have, the characters are kind of like thrown out of this world with all their histories and their relationships they have with the other characters, and you'll get to access all this and learn about them. But more than anything, the lore kind of leans into the history of these worlds and the history of these characters, because when you assume control of them, you're creating their story from that point forward. You assume control of them after their timeline has ended and their world is kind of behind them. And Tony, I could let you speak to the Meek if you'd like.
So my inspiration for the Meek is a world where they first discover mana as a source of energy and a source of magic. And before that, what they don't realize is that this mana is rapidly evolving all different species. So like there are human type wolves, there are fairies, there are normal humans, and there's a small family, not very crazy little family that basically finds these little mana worms underground, and they are the source of mana. This is the reason why the whole world is evolving at such a rate. And it's a story of basically a grab for power, and a family that's all torn apart trying to fight over this energy source. And I'll give a little peek to this guy back here, Jokal. He is actually a manifestation of the mana and trying to protect the world, and he comes after the kingdom that's basically sucking all the mana out of the world. So he's a mountain, and he's the guy that likes to eat the terrain while he plays. But yeah, it's very, very magical, lots of spells and all the different characters, and all the characters that we have in the game, all of their abilities are based off of all this lore. So when we were developing the characters, it was story, and it was story first, followed by the miniature and how the miniature looked, followed by the gameplay mechanics for that. So when you look at the character, you'll see, one of my characters, Roland, he's got fire in one hand and rock in the other, and he has the ability to change between a fire stance for a greater attack and a rock stance for greater defense. So all the characters you kind of see like, oh, this is their lore, this is how they look, and this is how they play. They're all kind of in sync.
Yeah, and I will add to that as well that fear in particular is the sentience from the fallen world. And each themed box will release, it'll come with its own, sentience. And effectively what a sentience is the manifestation of what most impacted that world before it came to the Timescape. So long story short, fear was the driving force, the most impactful force in that universe, which led to its ultimate circumstances before it collided and its time ran out. And so in each one of these worlds and in each one of these themed boxes, you're going to get that effectively. It's all driven by and starts with the story. What was the story of this universe, and what was more or less the theme of that universe? And so in the Fallen universe was what drove them. And so when you play that game, that's what you face. You face fear. And each one of the worlds will have its own boss, and it all, from an artistic point of view, the creative direction was, let's pick metaphysical concepts. Let's pick something big. And each one of these worlds have this big metaphysical concept. And, the challenge on an art side was to go, okay, how do you take these metaphysical concepts and then give them physical form? How do you take fear, and what does that look like? And so for me, I had the unique opportunity to get to sculpt fear. I just thought of all the things that, I was most afraid of. And I tried to bring those to life as best I could. So when you face fear, if you share any of my fears, I'm sure that you will, you'll see
Find them on there.
You'll see what the inspirations were. And uniquely, I saw Nick, you changed your background. We'll let Nick talk a bit about the Lamplighter race, which is going to be coming in the next box called Heart of Desire. And go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So the race that I was responsible for was the Lamplighters, and I have a extensive background in video games. Like, I love video games, but I also love anime. So when you are in the Lamplighter universe, you are going to see Naruto themes come out. You are going to see Korean MMO themes come out from and I mean, it's just inspiration, of course. But
Kingdom Hearts.
we have Kingdom Hearts inspiration that's in there. Our giant boss is called Desire, which is why the expansion is called Heart of Desire, and he's one of the coolest miniatures, and I can't wait for everyone to see him. But he's got this giant heart that goes straight through him, and it's just empty, and that's why he's called Desire, because he's trying to grab he wants everything, but nothing fills him up. So like Chris said, we had a lot of design challenges when we were trying to bring these really, really, really large topics to an art style. But what I wanted to mention more than anything, and by the way, this is Flamaven. Flamaven is from the Lamplighter universe, and we'll reveal more about the lore later, when we release that box. But this giant bird is tamed by the goddess named Jyoti, and she actually rides atop him in the lore, and is like her side, or her kind of giant phoenix pet that she can keep by her side. But what you'll learn when you get these is, when you're reading about the Fallen lore, and you're reading about the Meek lore, and when you're reading about the Lamplighters and Hannah's world, which is the she-kind, you're really learning about us as individuals. These are the founders' lores. We sat there, and none of them are the same, because we just spilled out our insides and said, this is what we love, this is what makes us unique. And I think inherently we have shared stories with you about our own lives that we probably couldn't have done just by talking about it. We've shared it in a way that it just kind of came out, and I'm really excited for the community to get a hold of this lore and say, wow, this is really in depth, number one. Number two, it's very complete. And like Anthony said, it's very consistent throughout not only the telling of the stories, but also the gameplay and the art. There's this complete picture that we have built for you so that you're not just like, well, this is a cool character, but you don't know anything about it other than that it's a cool character. Now, this is a cool character with a backstory. Oh, I understand why this character has molten fists and a stone hand. Oh, I understand why he works this way in game. Aha, now I have a complete picture. And that is so important in storytelling, and something we've been able to do.
Create an emotional connection with the player and the miniatures of the characters, yes, is very important. Yes.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things is once you do deeply understand the backstories of the characters, through whatever random chance or circumstance, when you see a one character fighting another character in game and you're like, oh man, you think about the story and you're like, oh, that would have been such an amazing confrontation, or oh, they're best friends, or oh, they're worst enemies, so this makes sense. So that added depth of storytelling for us, it really does impact when you're playing the game. It makes these moments so much cooler and so much more theatrical. Understanding the context and the relationship between them when they're battling.
Now,
I'm looking forward to knowing more about Moggy. That character. So,
no, I wanted to ask something about when it comes to the narrative, the storyline, because I think this is something that HeroScape is seriously lacking. HeroScape has a narrative, and they do have story. They have lore, but it can be deeper. I'm not going to say it's not deep. It can be deeper. It can be more fleshed out. And it's one of the reasons why I made Tales of Halley Aftermath Chronicles, was to have some narrative storyline for the player to connect more with the characters. Because you could have a head game to where, okay, everything makes sense, the game plays well, okay, I'll keep on playing it. But you have both head and a heart connection to something. That is so much stronger. That keeps you more invested into the game. So when it comes to the realm of Source, the realm of TimeStrike, will there be something like you'll obviously have like stories in the release, the expansions. Is there going to be anything like novels or anything about character development and narratives to connect you more with the universe? Heroes, villains, type of things. Weight to the story. If this happens, then something drastic like this is. Crazy stuff is already happening. How is the story being told? Yeah, it's. The world building is important, but also narrowing it down to a single character as well is important to create that heart connection. So is there any plans on that? Do you guys have anything developed in that?
Yeah, so I will I'll say two things. First, in terms of heart, I can promise you every Adventure Together game is 100% heart. It's we really, this is a passion. This is something we love deeply, and that's going to come through for sure. The second thing is the story will be told based upon the theme of each box. So like I said, most of the characters right now have their histories. You're going to see the two universes, the Fallen and the Meek, clash, and hopefully some storytelling. And again, I can't speak for Hannah. I wish you were on the call to tell you guys more. But there is a lore book being built that'll come with that first game. And the way you can expect it to be kind of for you to learn more and for the world to grow and evolve is every time we release one of these boxes, you'll get a story told of what happens between the Meek and the Fallen in the Timescape, as well as the history of all the characters that are in the game. So you learn about their pasts, and you'll slowly start to learn more and more and more about what the Timescape is and how that conflict plays out between these characters. So it's really fun to see the worlds collide, because you'll learn the histories, and then you'll get to see this sort of the two characters and how they and their diverse backgrounds and their histories sort of come together in this new plane and this new realm. So yeah, you can kind of expect that to happen. But in terms of the IP, how far do we want to take it? I mean, we'd love to do graphic novels. We'd love to do all sorts of stuff. It really, right now, we just kind of have to keep our sights fixed on, you know, go to Kickstarter, deliver to backers.
First things first.
First things first. But yeah, I don't really, like Nick said earlier, we didn't really put limits on ourselves. So, of course, we worked really hard on this IP. We love the characters. We love their stories and histories. And there's really no end to how far we can take them. But for now, what players can expect is every time you get a new box or you buy a new themed box, you'll learn a little bit more about the characters and their worlds. Lore is really important to us.
I'll add to that. There's full, as far as what's done right now, character arcs, stories, timelines. That's done for all 4 of these different races already.
Relatives.
Yeah, like how everyone's tied together, you know, the timeline of start to finish, right to the point where they get sucked into the timescape is fleshed out.
Yeah, and we even include other characters that maybe aren't even mentioned in the game yet, so you'll get teasers at maybe future characters that we'll be developing. The Lamplighters do a good job at that as in their lore, where there's characters where you're like, oh, we haven't built him yet, and he's in our mind, and we're like, okay, I can't wait to bring him to life one day. But we're setting ourselves up for iteration, and that's why we liked the theme behind TimeStrike. Universes coming together again. We that was easy for us to strip the boundaries and say we're not sci-fi, we're not fantasy, we're not anything. We're worlds. We're whatever you can imagine. We could have a world of, you know, in our last Q&A session, they asked, well, what IP would you guys like to partner with? And I was like, Pokemon, bring it on. World of Pokemon, bring it in. And Anthony's like, World of Naruto, bring it in. And we all had like Attack on Titan, bring it in, whatever it is.
The ninjas.
There's no limitations. Again, we said, we don't want the limitations. We don't want anything to stop us. And that was why that whole storyline really made sense to us.
I think that's also really, really important for the community to build customs. I think that, you know, from what I've learned of that endeavor from like C3G and teams like that, was that they basically, or not C3G, but C3V, they basically they were like trying to find how do we keep it consistent with the lore that the original HeroScape universe has created. You know, they didn't want to stray too far. That won't be the case with TimeStrike, because if it's anime, it can be in it. If it's fantasy, it can be in it. If it's sci-fi, it can be in it. If it's your imagination and your story and you want to tell it, you should be able to tell it through this game, and it should fit into the lore. It shouldn't be something that makes absolutely no sense. And so that's why this sort of, you know, massive multiverse of colliding worlds with different and diverse backstories and histories and planes and sort of themes was so important.
All right, and one thing that Joe was saying too, who's writing the story? Do you have a narrator? Is there like someone narrating this whole thing, kind of like Thorman to HeroScape? Is there anything like that?
Can't say.
Okay. Ooh. Oh wow. Okay. You answered by not answering.
Ryan, you might already know, because I know we shared quite a bit of the like origins, if you will, of the story. But how we release that to the public is, let's just say it's a mystery for now, who may or may not be narrating this tale to you.
Oh, my lips are sealed. I'm just asking questions.
We want to have fun with it.
Awesome. Now when it comes to, and I'm just going to ask this question, and if there's nothing else, then we'll move on. When it comes to like this world of TimeStrike, where all these worlds are colliding together, and I think someone said that, you know, it was like the void, and you have all these just everybody's trying to fight for survival to not be wiped out. I mean, where is that conflict going? Like, where is this world where all these worlds are crashing in on? What is that about? Can you expand on that a little bit, or do you want to keep quiet about that?
I guess the best way to explain it, I have a nice little graph of it when we first started, but effectively, you know, in the universe we all experience today, it's constantly expanding. So if you can imagine that, you know, the universe is a circle. On one half of it, you have universes constantly expanding. When you reach the end of your time, your universe starts to contract instead. And it contracts and contracts until it collides. And once it's collided, it's going to be recycled back into this world again where it's expanding. So it's effectively, it's the opposite of everything that you experience in the universe today. Instead of being an expanding universe, it's contracting. Instead of time being linear, it is all over the place. It's in every direction all at once at the same time. So it really is, the best way to describe it is just a universe graveyard.
Wow.
It's where universes go to die, be recycled, and start anew. It's the other half of the coin, if you will.
And there is stories to be told about the timescape. There are characters, beings, and things that have existed there and will continue to exist there. I think Rogue mentioned earlier he wants to learn about the Magi. Magi is from the timescape. He is not from his own universe. He's got his own story that how he came to be and how he just exists there as his own being.
Yeah, most of the monsters that will come with the theme box are actually timescape monsters, and so they are things that have somehow, beyond any sort of reasonable understanding, managed to survive there and make it a home that they can live in, whether it's through scavenging or, in the case of the Magi, through annoying other survivors who end up taking care of it. It really is. There is some life in the timescape. Someone has asked before if there were like factions and cities and stuff. No, it's not that level of civilization, but there are definitely going to be forms of life that manage to thrive.
Okay, interesting. It'll be interesting to discover like everything that you guys have like researched and developed, and also what you'll expand on in the future as well. It seems very engaging, and like the LSM here is saying in the comment, deep world building. Some of that we love that when that can be developed in the game, because it just gives another reason to play. So yeah, appreciate those comments on the lore, and definitely gonna try and have Hannah on in the future so we can get like really in depth. I think we could have a good conversation on that in the future sometime.